Today on CTV News, friends identify a man found dead in North Lethbridge yesterday. Plus, Littlebow Health Centre supporters plan to go right to the top to raise the alarm about saving the facility. And Lethbridge researchers are at the heart of anthrax research into the death of hundreds of livestock.
CTV News with Alicia Fieldberg.
Hello. The man accused in the city's first double homicide made a brief court appearance today. The bodies of two men were found in Adams Park on Mother's Day. Police say 35-year-old Marty Steele and 30-year-old Aaron Thacker were stabbed to death. 28-year-old Cody Blue Favel is charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder, robbery, and weapons offenses. The case was set over until August 24th to set a date for a preliminary hearing. The hearing will determine if there's enough evidence to go to trial. A child abductor who triggered the biggest manhunt in BC history is one step closer to receiving the harshest designation available under the criminal code. It's part of a legal maneuver that could help keep Randall Hopley behind bars for the rest of his life. Rob Brown explains.
He was the face of what every parent fears, that someone would sneak into their home at night and snatch their sleeping child. But Canadians may never have to worry about Randall Hopley again.
This is a very unusual circumstance, as you all, I'm sure, are well aware of. This is a very unusual circumstance.
Last fall, Hopley took Keenan Hebert from his Sparwood home.
I seen an opportunity because these people left their doors open.
He hid away in this cabin, returning the 3-year-old unharmed 4 days later. The rambling explanation Hopley offered after his arrest seemed to confuse even him.
I don't know how to explain it. Someday I'm going to have to somehow explain it.
But there was one thing he wanted to make crystal clear to Keenan's father.
Did you meet someone, Randall?
And did so in person near the end of the police interview.
I did not sexually assault your child whatsoever.
Hopley did sexually assault a 5-year-old 27 years ago and was accused of attempting to abduct this woman's boy in 2007, but he was only convicted of break and enter in that case. So Hopley has continued to insist that the record shows he is not a danger to the public, but the judge didn't buy it. Justice Heather Holmes saying Hopley made the boogeyman real. She ordered a psychiatric assessment to determine whether Hopley should be deemed a dangerous offender.
It's still pretty rare, this designation, though, right?
It is. I mean, when you're talking about an indefinite sentence, in some ways, some people view this sentence as more significant than a life sentence. There's really, the prospect that you won't ever get out of prison.
He says typically dangerous offenders do have a much longer history of violent crimes. Hopley's fate will be determined in the fall, but there is little doubt now that the boogeyman will be behind bars for some time. Rob Brown, CTV News, Vancouver.
Hopley will be back in front of the judge via video October 15th to set a date for a dangerous offender hearing. A Lethbridge woman will stand trial on fraud charges. Jacqueline Oler is accused of stealing thousands of dollars from a 90-year-old man in her care. Police say the accused allegedly wrote checks and made debit card transactions from his account between February 2010 and the elderly man's death on July 1st. Oler's case will return to court August 24th to set a date for trial. An 18-year-old man has died from his injuries after a rollover west of Coaldale earlier this week. Just after 4 Wednesday morning, emergency crews responded to the crash on Highway 3 near Broxburn Road. Richard Leslie Williams III of Coaldale was driving west when the car rolled. Williams wasn't wearing a seatbelt and was thrown from the vehicle. He was taken by Stars to Calgary, where he later died of serious head injuries. The 2 passengers, 18-year-old women from Coaldale and Lethbridge, sustained minor injuries and were treated at Chinook Regional Hospital. Police say alcohol wasn't a factor in this collision. RCMP and dive crews are still trying to recover the body of a 22-year-old man presumed drowned near Raymond. This video posted on YouTube shows teens sliding down the same irrigation canal known as Cooper's Drop. These teens made it down okay and celebrate at the bottom. It's an illegal activity and offenders are often ticketed. Police say 22-year-old Brandon Moore was doing the same kind of thing Wednesday but couldn't swim and never resurfaced.
And we've been working with the Water Authority, the fire departments in the area, the EMS, trying to recover the youth. We've been unsuccessful. We have our victim services people working with the family, and we hope that we can only quickly come to a conclusion of this very sad event.
Crews are continuing to search the water. Members of the local street community have identified a man who was found dead in North Lethbridge yesterday. 61-year-old Roland Whiteman was originally from the Blood Reserve. The director of Streets Alive says Whiteman was known to staff but not a regular at the mission. Just before noon Thursday, his body was discovered in an alley in the 1600 block of 1st Avenue North. Investigators spent several hours at the scene yesterday gathering evidence and talking to neighbors. At this point, police are calling it an unexplained sudden death. An autopsy was held today at the medical examiner's office in Calgary. A wake service will be held tonight for a 55-year-old man who died at the Lethbridge Shelter and Resource Centre earlier this week. Friends say Carl Goodrider fell down a cement stairway and struck his head, but managed to make his way to a sleeping mat in the shelter. He was found the next morning in medical distress and rushed to hospital where he was pronounced dead. Police have determined the death was non-criminal in nature. The manager of Community and Social Development for Lethbridge is expressing sympathy for the family and says the recent deaths reinforce the need for programs that help get people off the street and into a more stable lifestyle.
The situation just reminds us how important it is for people to have a safe and secure place to live. We also know that through our Housing First initiatives that many people improve their quality of life and their health and their well-being, and this just reinforces situations and hopefully can reduce those kinds of risks.
The wake for Carl Goodrider is scheduled for tonight at 7 at the Streets Alive Mission. Across from the courthouse, a funeral service will also be held tomorrow at Streets Alive. Police say it's unlikely charges will be laid in connection with a fatal pedestrian collision earlier this week. A 22-year-old man was struck by a car while crossing Mayor McGrath Drive. Just after 9:30 Wednesday night, Wesley Raymond Finley was airlifted by Stars to the Foothills Hospital, and he later died. Police say Finley was not using the crosswalk and speed was not a factor in the collision. As a result, no charges are expected against the driver of the car. So Dory, it's still going to be warm for a few days, but then on Tuesday and Wednesday we can expect some showers and temperatures in the teens?
Yeah, that's right, Alicia. We talked about this yesterday, the fact that we do have a low-pressure center moving in, and we lose the protection of the ridge of high pressure for a couple of days, but it looks like now the latest data is showing that late in the day on Wednesday, we're already starting to see some clearing trends, and we'll be back into the high 20s, possibly the low 30s when we get into next weekend. So it's just a short interruption, and then we're back to the hot stuff. I'll have more details coming up.
Thanks, Dory. Supporters of a Carmen Gay Health Center facility are hoping a public rally will save the center from closing. On July 10th, Alberta Health Services announced the closure of Little Bow Continuing Care Center, claiming the building is too old. Staff say the building passed a full facility inspection earlier this year. The Save Little Bow rally will be held at Premier Redford's office in Calgary Tuesday at noon. The closure will also affect 11% of the town's workforce, but many will be taking jobs in other facilities. Staff say the ripple effect will be felt across southern Alberta.
We have some of the highest seniority in the south region here, 37 years, 32 years, 31 years, quite a few staff with high seniority. It's going to be ugly. They're going to start bumping into the neighboring regions.
The union is organizing the rally to raise provincial awareness about the situation in Carmen Gay. A bus will leave from Carmen Gay School at 9:30 Tuesday morning to take supporters to the rally. The city has determined the cause of a power outage yesterday that blacked out 200 homes and businesses northeast of Henderson Lake. The outage happened just after 6 last night when a small section of an underground cable faulted. Within 2 hours, crews managed to get power restored to all of the homes affected. Scientists at a Lethbridge research lab have been at the heart of testing for the anthrax bacteria responsible for the deaths of bison and cattle in Western Canada last month. The carcasses of 130 bison were discovered in the Northwest Territories in early July during a routine surveillance flight. An outbreak in northeastern Saskatchewan a few weeks later left 175 cattle dead and 1 person infected with a mild form of the disease. As Terry Boat reports, the testing for anthrax is done at the Canadian Food Inspection Agency lab just outside of Lethbridge.
Canadian Food Inspection Agency laboratory west of Lethbridge is the Canadian Reference Lab for anthrax. The testing has to be conducted at a level 3 facility, one that's equipped with a high biocontainment area. Dr. Betty Goldstein-Thomas is the lab's manager of bacteriology.
The concern with anthrax is that unlike other bacteria, it has the ability to form spores that can contaminate the environment. So those spores are viable for quite a long period of time. And that's why we see sporadic cases of anthrax occurring from year to year or every few years.
Health officials say anthrax outbreaks have implications for ongoing recovery efforts of threatened bison species in the Northwest Territories and may pose a health risk to humans as well as other wildlife and even domestic livestock, as it did in northeastern Saskatchewan last month. While the carcasses are destroyed, samples are sent here for testing.
We don't receive the entire carcass. We request that they send blood, if available, or that they take swabs and into bloody orifices and send those to us. Occasionally we will get tissues, but we recommend that if an animal is suspected of having died from anthrax, that they not cut open the carcass.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says findings of anthrax in Western Canada are not uncommon. Researchers suspect this year's wet weather followed by a hot, dry spell likely contributed to the outbreak in the Northwest Territories. They say bison rolling or wallowing in the mud may inhale spores that already exist in the ground. While anthrax is a human health concern, it's actually rare to have cases associated with animal outbreaks. And when caught early, scientists say it can easily be treated with antibiotics. Terry Boat, CTV News, Lethbridge.
Federal health authorities say the outbreak in Saskatchewan is under control and no longer poses a significant threat to human or cattle. Hundreds of Lethbridge and area residents will be part of a national health study. 420 people were randomly picked to answer the Canadian Health Measures Survey. They'll be meeting with Statistics Canada next week to answer questions about their health, including their diet and medical history. Participants will also visit a mobile clinic later this month where health specialists will measure height, weight, blood pressure, and muscle strength. The data from the 2-year study will be used by researchers and scientists across the country. And now let's check out the markets.